Unit 43. The ground shook as heavy machines roared in the deep tunnels. The air was thick with dust. Every breath tasted like metal and fire. Far below the alien world's surface, in a dark and endless mine, lived thousands of slaves. Some had names. Most had numbers. One of them was Unit 43. She was small, thin, and silent. Her skin was pale from never seeing the sun. Her silver hair was messy and dirty. Her glowing blue eyes had no hope inside them. She did not cry. She did not speak. She did not ask questions. Every day was the same. She woke up to a loud alarm. She stood in a long line with other slaves. She ate one piece of dry food. Then she walked into the tunnels to carry heavy stones for the Dravak. The Dravak were insect-like creatures. They had sharp legs, black eyes, and no hearts. They ruled the mines with whips and guns. If a slave slowed down or fell, the Dravak hit them without mercy. Unit 43 had worked in the mines since she was a child. She didn't remember where she came from. She didn't know her real name. The Dravak had taken it away. They called her Unit 43, and that was all she had. One day, something changed. A strange noise filled the mine. The slaves stopped working for a second. The guards shouted, "Keep moving." But the noise grew louder. It was the sound of chains dragging, but different. From the shadows came a figure. He walked slowly. He was tall, covered in blood and bruises. His hair was black, and his face was hard but calm. He was human. Unit 43 froze. She had never seen a human before. Not in real life. Only in broken stories whispered between slaves. The guards pushed the man forward. One shouted, "This creature is dangerous. You will work next to him. Try anything, and you die." The human didn't speak. He just looked at them. His eyes burned like fire. Even the Dravak seemed unsure around him. They chained him beside Unit 43. She didn't look at him at first. Slaves weren't allowed to talk. If she even glanced the wrong way, she could be punished. But the man turned his head and whispered, "Hey, what's your name?" She said nothing. He looked confused. "Can you speak?" She shook her head, slowly. He smiled a little. "I'll call you something anyway. You don't look like a number to me." She looked up, just for a second. No one had said that to her before. The man nodded to himself. "You look like a Lyra," he said. "Yeah, that feels right." Lyra. The word echoed in her mind. It was soft, warm, almost beautiful. She didn't know what it meant. Maybe it didn't mean anything. But when he said it, her heart felt something new, like a small light in the dark. That night, after the work ended, she sat in her small corner of the sleeping cave. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She just thought about the name. Lyra. The next day, they worked side by side again. The man smiled at her. "I'm Jack," he said. "I was a soldier once. Now I guess I'm a slave like you." She looked at him and nodded, just a little. He whispered more words, taught her simple English. Rock, hand, water. She repeated them in her mind, but didn't say anything out loud. One day, he said something different. "We'll get out of here, Lyra. I promise." She looked at him sharply. Escape? That was impossible. The walls were too thick. The guards too many. But he smiled again. "I've seen worse places. We just need to wait. And watch." Before she could react, a guard's voice rang out. "You two, stop whispering." A whip cracked in the air. Jack stepped forward. "I was just teaching her a word," he said calmly. The Dravak guard hissed. "She is not allowed to speak. She is a number, not a person." Jack didn't move. "She's not a number. Her name is Lyra." The guard roared in rage and hit Jack across the face with his clawed hand. Lyra gasped, but quickly covered her mouth. Jack fell to the ground, bleeding from his lip, but he still smiled. "She has a name now," he whispered. The guard shouted again and pulled Jack away. "You want to protect her? Good. You'll both suffer." Lyra stood frozen. Her hands were shaking. For the first time in her life, someone had been hurt for her. She didn't understand it. She didn't know why he cared. But that night, when the lights went out and the mine grew quiet, she whispered softly to herself for the first time. Lyra, the human who wouldn't kneel. The mine felt colder the next day. Unit 43. No, Lyra woke up early, her body aching. But something inside her was different now. A strange warmth lived in her chest. She had a name. A real name. And someone had given it to her. She didn't know why he did it, but she couldn't forget his voice. Her name is Lyra. The guards had taken Jack, the human, away last night after he stood up to them. No slave had ever done that before. No one had ever dared to speak back. But Jack didn't kneel. He didn't beg. He didn't even blink. Lyra kept her head down as she stood in line with the other slaves, waiting for food. She looked around, hoping to see him again. But he wasn't there. Her hands trembled. Had they killed him? Suddenly, the alarm siren echoed across the mine. Red lights flashed. The Dravak guards hissed in their own language, angry and confused. From one of the upper tunnels, 2 guards dragged someone forward. It was Jack. His shirt was torn, skin covered in cuts, but he still walked like a soldier. His eyes were calm, strong, alive. The slaves stared in silence. Even the old ones who had given up hope looked at him with wide eyes. The head guard, a large Dravak named Cranox, stepped forward. His voice shook the walls. This human refused to kneel to the warden. He disrespected the law. Cranox raised a long metal rod in the air. "He will kneel now, or he will burn." The slaves watched, silent and afraid. They had seen this rod before. It glowed with red energy. One touch could burn through flesh and bone. Jack looked at the rod, then at Cranox. Then he laughed. A dry, soft laugh. "No," Jack said, wiping blood from his mouth. "I will not kneel. I don't kneel for monsters." Cranox's eyes burned red. "You dare defy me." Jack's voice was low but clear. "You think you're strong because you have power, but you're cowards. You beat children. You chain the weak. And you fear anyone who still has a soul." The Dravak roared in anger. Cranox slammed the rod down, straight into Jack's chest. The slaves gasped. But Jack didn't fall. Smoke rose from his chest. He groaned in pain, but he stayed standing. Cranox hit him again, and again. But Jack still didn't kneel. Lyra's hands were shaking. She wanted to run forward, to scream, but she couldn't move. Finally, after the 4th hit, Cranox shouted, "Enough. Lock him in the fire pits. Let him burn there alone." 2 guards grabbed Jack and dragged him away. Lyra didn't see him for 2 days. The fire pits were a death sentence, a place deep inside the mine, where broken machines released toxic smoke and heat. No one came back from there. But on the 3rd day, as Lyra carried heavy stone up a steep slope, a whisper caught her ear. "Lyra." She turned quickly. No one was there. Then she saw it, a small rock placed near the wall. It had lines carved into it, a drawing. Her heart jumped. It was a picture of a flower, and below it, written in rough English letters, "Lyra, stay strong." She fell to her knees, hiding her face so the guards wouldn't see her tears. He was still alive. That night, Lyra didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of the sleeping cave, holding the rock in her hands. She had nothing else in the world, but now she had this. And more than that, she had hope. The next morning, the guards brought Jack back to the main tunnels. He was thinner, dirtier, and his hands shook, but he smiled when he saw her. Lyra didn't smile back, but she walked beside him without fear now. They worked together in silence, but their hearts spoke. At lunch, when the guards weren't looking, he passed her another carved rock. This one had a single word: freedom. She looked at him, confused. He whispered, "I know a way out." She stared. No one had ever escaped the slave mines. It was impossible. Jack nodded slowly. Not alone. But maybe. Together. Lyra wanted to speak. To say yes. But fear held her tongue. Then, from across the tunnel, a large Dravak guard stomped toward them. It was Cranox. He grabbed Jack by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "You still have fire," Cranox growled. "Let's see how long it burns." Jack groaned, but didn't fight. Cranox turned to Lyra. "Stay away from the human. He will only bring pain." The guard walked off, laughing. Jack leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Lyra helped him stand. He looked at her, bloody and bruised, and whispered, still not kneeling. Lyra whispered back, for the first time in her life, "Me neither." Punishment. The days in the slave mines were always dark, but after Cranox's warning, the shadows felt even heavier. Lyra worked with her head down, but her thoughts were loud inside her mind. Freedom. That word Jack had given her didn't go away. It stayed in her heart like a secret fire. But fire was dangerous. Jack didn't speak much that day. His body was weak. His skin was burned. But he kept working, lifting heavy rocks like nothing had changed. Lyra tried not to look at him too often. But others were watching. That evening, while the slaves were returning to their sleeping quarters, 2 guards grabbed Lyra from behind. She screamed, but no one dared to help. Jack tried to reach her, but 3 more guards held him down. He shouted, "Let her go," but the guards only laughed. "She broke the rules," one said. She spoke. She smiled. She remembered her name. Jack's eyes went wild. "She's a person, not a machine." The guard hit him in the stomach with a shock rod. Jack collapsed to the ground, coughing blood. Lyra was dragged away into the punishment pits. The punishment pits were worse than death. It was a small tunnel, deep underground, hot, silent, and lonely. There was no light, just darkness and pain. Lyra was chained to the wall by her wrists. The metal cuffs burned her skin. Her legs trembled. A small panel on the wall opened, and cold water sprayed her face, then stopped. That was her only drink for the day. No food, no rest, no voice. She tried not to cry. Crying meant weakness. But this time, tears fell. She wasn't crying because of pain. She was crying because she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She missed someone. She missed Jack. Meanwhile, Jack lay in the corner of the work tunnel, still bleeding. His face was swollen, one eye shut. Other slaves walked past, silent, afraid. But then, they didn't speak much. But each time Jack whispered Lyra, her hands moved faster. She was no longer Unit 43. She was alive. She had a name. She had someone who believed in her, but not everyone wanted them to be free. A tall, scar-covered slave named Zarn had been in the mines for 20 years. He saw everything. He saw Jack's strength. He saw Lyra's hope. And it made him angry. One night, Zarn approached a Dravak guard and whispered, "The human is planning something. Check Tunnel 12." The guard nodded. "You'll be rewarded." Zarn smiled. "I just want more food." Back in Tunnel 12, Jack gave Lyra a small map scratched into a metal plate. "This is the way out," he said. "Old tunnel. Hidden. Just wide enough for one person." Lyra touched the map gently. "Why are you helping me?" Jack looked at her and said, "Because you're not a number. You're Lyra. And you're going to make it." Before she could speak, an alarm rang out. Cranox's voice boomed through the mine. "Guards, find the human and the girl. They are planning to escape." Lyra dropped the map. Jack's eyes went wide. "It's too early," he whispered. "Someone betrayed us." The escape plan. The sirens echoed across the mine. Red lights blinked. Guards hissed and shouted in every tunnel. Lyra froze. She looked at Jack. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, ready for danger. He grabbed her hand and pulled her deeper into Tunnel 12. "We don't have much time," he whispered. "They're coming." Lyra's heart pounded. The map, the secret tunnel, everything they had planned for, was now in danger. The betrayal had come too early. They ducked behind a broken mining machine as two Dravak guards ran past, searching. Lyra whispered, "What do we do now?" Jack looked at the wall and tapped a weak point in the rock. "We go deeper. I know where the old shaft is, but it's dangerous." Lyra nodded. She didn't need to be told twice. She was ready. They slipped into a narrow side passage, lit only by flickering lights. Jack moved quickly, guiding her with his memory. "This tunnel used to be part of the old mine before it collapsed," he explained. "The Dravak sealed it years ago, but I found an opening." Lyra's mind was racing. How did he learn all this? She remembered now. He had said he was a soldier, a human soldier. Maybe he had been trained for things like this. Maybe he had seen war. Maybe that's why he never gave up. After a long crawl, they reached a metal door, rusted, half covered in stone. Jack pulled a hidden metal rod from under a pipe. He pushed it into a small opening on the door. Click. The door opened with a heavy groan. On the other side was an old shaft. It smelled of dust and oil. Ropes hung from the ceiling. A broken ladder ran along one side. Jack smiled. "This is it. We go up, then crawl through a side pipe. It leads outside, into the wastelands." Lyra looked up. The shaft was so tall, she couldn't see the top. "Can we make it?" she asked. Jack looked at her. "We have to." But they weren't alone. Back in the main tunnels, Cranox paced like a beast. He slammed his claw into the wall. "Find them," he screamed. "Seal every passage. If they escape, it will be your heads." Zarn stood nearby, arms crossed. He had expected a reward, but now the mine was in chaos. Guards were yelling. Lights were breaking. Maybe he had made a mistake. He stepped back into the shadows. Inside the shaft, Jack and Lyra began to climb. Each step was hard. The ladder was old. Rungs broke under their feet. Jack climbed first. He kept looking down to make sure Lyra was okay. She was tired. Her arms ached. But she refused to stop. Step by step, higher and higher. They reached a ledge where the side pipe was hidden. Jack pushed it open. Cold wind hit their faces. Lyra gasped. Fresh air. She hadn't smelled it in years. She reached out her hand and smiled for the first time since she could remember. Jack chuckled. That's what freedom smells like. But the moment was short. A voice echoed below. There they are. A Dravak patrol had found the shaft. Jack turned to Lyra. Go. Crawl into the pipe. Follow it until you reach the outer gate. What about you? I'll slow them down. No, she shouted. He touched her hand. Lyra, this isn't just about you and me. If we escape, others will follow. If we fail, no one ever tries again. She hesitated, then nodded. With one last look, she climbed into the pipe and disappeared into the darkness. Jack turned and looked down the shaft. 3 guards were climbing fast. He reached into his shirt and pulled out a small device. Lyra didn't know, but he had hidden something long ago. A human-made explosive, smuggled in during his capture. He armed it and threw it down the shaft. Boom! The explosion shook the tunnel. The guards fell. The walls cracked. But Jack was thrown back too. His body slammed against the shaft wall. Blood ran down his forehead. He groaned, then pulled himself up. He had to reach the pipe. Lyra crawled through the narrow space for what felt like hours. The metal scraped her knees. Her arms burned. But she kept going. Finally, she saw light. A grate blocked the exit. She pushed it with all her strength. It opened, She fell out into sand, real sand. She was outside. Above her, the sky was purple. Stars shone for the first time in her memory. Her mouth opened in awe. She had never seen the stars. Then her heart sank. Jack wasn't behind her. She waited. Minutes passed. No sound. No movement. "Jack," she called out. No answer. Then footsteps. Jack crawled out of the pipe, coughing, bloody, but alive. She ran to him. He smiled weakly. "Told you I'd catch up." She helped him stand. They looked at the stars together. "We made it," she whispered. "No," Jack said, pointing at the mines far in the distance. "We just started." Back in the tunnels, Cranach stood in rage. "They're gone," a guard said. Cranach slammed his fist down. But something was changing in the mine. Slaves were whispering. They had heard the explosion. Some had seen the fight, and they had seen something more dangerous than any weapon. Hope. And deep underground, rebellion began to grow. Betrayal in the shadows. The desert wind howled over the broken rocks. Sand danced in the moonlight like ghostly fingers. Jack and Lyra stood just outside the mines, hidden behind a rocky ridge, watching the smoking ruins of the escape shaft collapse behind them. They were free, but not safe. Jack leaned against a boulder, breathing hard. Blood dried on his forehead. His shoulder was twisted from the blast, and every step brought pain. Lyra sat beside him. Her hair was dusty, her hands cut and raw, but her eyes were wide and alive. She had seen the stars. She had felt real wind. She had survived. She turned to him and whispered, "Where do we go now?" Jack smiled weakly. "We find the others." "The others?" Jack pointed toward the north. "There's a human outpost, a rebel base. They're building a resistance. If we make it there, we can bring help. Real help. For everyone still trapped in the mines." Lyra nodded. "Then we go." But before they could take one step, a sound echoed in the night. A ship. A loud hum filled the air. Lights cut across the dark sky. Lyra's heart jumped. They found us. Jack grabbed her hand. "Run." Meanwhile, deep inside the slave mines, everything was falling apart. Guards shouted. Slaves whispered. Some refused to work. Others looked up for the first time in years, like they remembered what standing straight felt like. Cranach stormed through the halls, roaring in anger. "Who helped the human? Who showed them the path? Speak, or all of you suffer." But the slaves said nothing. Not even Zarn. He stood in the shadows, quiet, thinking. He had betrayed Jack and Lyra. He had told the guards about their plan. He thought it would earn him extra food, maybe special treatment. But all he got was chaos. The guards were panicking. The system was cracking, and the name Lyra was being whispered all over the mine. Unit 43 was no longer a number. She was now a symbol. Zarn clenched his jaw. He had made a mistake. Above ground, Jack and Lyra ran over jagged rocks and dry sand. The ship followed them, scanning with bright beams of light. "It's a scout drone," Jack shouted. "Dravak Tech. They're searching for us." "We can't outrun a ship," Lyra said. Jack pointed toward a cliff. "We don't have to. We hide." They dove under a broken arch of stone, just as the light passed overhead. The drone hovered for a moment, scanned the area again, then turned and flew back toward the mine. Jack exhaled. That was too close. Lyra sat beside him, catching her breath. "I thought we were free," she said softly. Jack looked at her. "We are. But freedom isn't safe. It never is. We fight for it, every day." Back in the mine, something unexpected happened. A slave girl stood up. She was no older than 14. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice loud. She escaped. She made it. I saw it. The guards tried to stop her, but she beat them. The other slaves stared. She had a name, the girl said. Lyra. The human gave it to her. Cranox heard the noise and rushed to the area. "Silence her," he shouted. But the girl didn't stop. "She is not a number. And we aren't either." A guard stepped forward with a whip. But something happened that had never happened before. Another slave stepped between them. Then another. And another. Until a small crowd of slaves stood in front of the girl, protecting her. Cranox roared in fury. "You dare rise against us?" A voice spoke from the back of the crowd. It was Zarn. "I dare," he said, stepping forward. "I dare to stand for her." Cranox snarled. "You betrayed them." Zarn's face darkened. "Yes, I did. And I was wrong. The human fought for her. For us. I didn't believe. But now I do." He turned to the others. "Who's with me?" At first, there was silence. Then a voice whispered, "Lyra." Then another, "Jack." And another, "Freedom." Soon, the chant began to spread like fire. "Lyra, Lyra, Lyra." Cranox raised his weapon. Enough. But before he could strike, Zarn moved fast, snatching a tool from the floor and smashing the power core of the nearest camera. The lights flickered. Sparks flew. And the rebellion began. Far away, in the wastelands, Jack and Lyra walked under a pale sky. They had no water, no food, but they had purpose. Jack showed her an old map etched on metal, drawn by human rebels long ago. "We'll reach the outpost in 3 days if we stay hidden." Lyra touched the side of the map. "Will they believe us?" Jack nodded. "They'll believe you." "Why me?" "Because your story is stronger than any weapon." Lyra didn't answer. She just looked forward. The wind picked up. Behind them, far in the distance, smoke began to rise from the mine. Lyra closed her eyes. The fire had started. The great escape. The desert was cruel. Hot winds blew sand into their faces. The ground burned their feet. And the sun, pale and cold in this alien world, gave no warmth, only light and endless distance. Jack and Lyra walked side by side, their bodies weak but their hearts strong. Each step was pain, but each step was freedom. Behind them, the smoke from the mine still rose into the sky, far away, but not forgotten. Lyra turned and looked back. "Do you think they're fighting now?" Jack nodded. "I think we started something bigger than both of us." She smiled, though her lips were dry. "Then we keep going. We don't stop." By the second day, they had no food left. The water pouch Jack had saved was empty. Lyra could barely stand. Her legs trembled with each step. Jack carried her when she collapsed. He didn't complain. Not once. He whispered stories to her. Stories of Earth, oceans, cities full of lights, food that tasted sweet, music that made people dance. He spoke of things she couldn't imagine. But she believed him, because Jack never lied. And more than that, he never gave up. That night, under the stars, they rested behind a rock wall. Jack's shoulder was infected. He tried to hide the pain, but Lyra saw it. "You need help," she said. Jack smiled. "We both do." He handed her a metal chip. It was small, about the size of her thumb. "This is a beacon," he explained. "If I die, you press this. It sends a signal to the human resistance. It will call help." She stared at it, her hands shaking. "I won't use it without you." He looked at her gently. "If you live, the others will live too." Tears filled her eyes. "Don't talk like that." But Jack didn't answer. He just looked up at the stars. Back in the mine, the rebellion had begun to burn. Zarn and the other slaves had taken control of 3 tunnel sections. Guards were retreating. Power lines had been cut. The Dravak were panicking. Cranox stood in the control room, furious. "They're only slaves," he shouted. "How is this possible?" But it wasn't just numbers. It was belief. The slaves were no longer afraid. They had hope, and that made them dangerous. They painted one word on the walls: Lyra. And everywhere that name was written, the Dravak knew the world was changing. On the third day, Jack and Lyra reached the canyon. It was massive, deep and wide, with jagged rocks and sharp drops. The only way across was an old metal bridge, broken in the middle. Jack looked down at the gap. "We can jump it, maybe." Lyra looked at him like he was crazy. But they had no choice. The drone scouts had returned. A red light blinked in the sky behind them. "They're following us," Jack said. "We make the jump or we get captured." They ran. The bridge creaked under their feet. Metal groaned. They reached the gap. Jack looked at Lyra. "Go first. I'll be right behind." Lyra stepped back, took a breath, ran forward, and jumped. Her foot caught the edge. She slipped. But Jack caught her hand just in time. He pulled her up, heart pounding. They turned to run. And the drone shot. A blast hit the bridge. It shook violently. Jack pushed Lyra forward. "Run." She ran. Jack jumped. But this time, his leg caught the edge. He slipped and fell. Lyra screamed. "Jack." She reached down, grabbed his arm with both hands. He dangled over the edge, bleeding, weak. "I told you I'd catch up," he said with a small smile. She cried as she pulled him up, inch by inch. "I'm not letting go," she whispered. Together, they'd reached the top and collapsed. Above them, the drone circled again. But this time, it wasn't alone. A new sound filled the air. Engines. Fast. Loud. Human. 3 rebel ships blasted through the clouds, weapons hot. The drone exploded in seconds. Lyra stared, shocked. One ship landed nearby. A human soldier stepped out. "Jack?" he asked. "Jack Connors." Jack groaned. "Took you long enough." They were flown to the nearest rebel base, a hidden camp in the mountains. Clean water, real food, medical care. Lyra stared at it all, wide-eyed. She didn't know what to touch first. A young rebel nurse cleaned her hands. "You're the one," the nurse said. "You're the girl from the mines." "How do you know?" Lyra asked. The nurse pointed at a screen. A video was playing. Footage from inside the mine. Slades rising. Fighting. Chanting. The sound echoed through the room. "Lyra. Lyra. Lyra." Lyra covered her mouth. She had become more than just a number. She had become a name. In a large meeting room, human leaders spoke with Jack. "You started something powerful," they told him. "The mines are unstable. The rebellion is growing. We can't ignore it now." Jack looked at them. "Then send help. Send ships. Send hope." "And her?" one asked. He looked out the window, where Lyra sat watching the sky. "She's not just a survivor," he said. "She's the symbol." Later that night, Jack and Lyra stood alone under the stars. The wind was quiet now. She asked, "What happens next?" Jack looked at her. "You lead them." She shook her head. "I'm just a girl." "No," he said. "You're Lyra, and they believe in you." She looked down at her hands. Hands that once carried stones, now held the weight of a movement. She whispered, "Then I'll fight. For them. For you. For everyone who never had a name." Jack smiled. "Good," he said, "because the great escape wasn't just leaving the mine. It was becoming free. She has a name now." The stars above the rebel base burned bright like fireflies across the black sky. Lyra stood by herself on the landing platform, wrapped in a warm blanket. Her silver hair moved gently in the wind. She had never stood in a place so high, so open, and so free. For the first time in her life, she was not underground, not chained, not silent. She was not Unit 43 anymore. She was Lyra, and the whole galaxy was about to know it. Inside the rebel command room, leaders from different planets watched a screen. They had received videos from inside the mines, recorded by hidden rebel cameras and broken security drones. They saw it all. Slaves fighting back, Dravak guards falling, tunnels covered in one word painted in red: Lyra. An older rebel commander stood and pointed at the screen. This is no longer just a prison break. This is a revolution. Another leader said, she gave them more than hope. She gave them a reason to believe they are people again. And in the middle of the room, Jack Connors sat, arm in a sling, silent but proud. She's ready, he said. That same day, in a massive underground mine across the galaxy, on a different planet, another young girl whispered to herself as she lifted a stone. Lyra. She had never met her, but she had heard the story. She had seen the secret message carved on the wall. You are not a number. You are not forgotten. Your name is waiting. Lyra. And now, across dozens of minds, thousands of slaves whispered her name like a spark in the dark. Back at the rebel base, Lyra sat with a woman in front of a camera. It was her first time being filmed. Her hands shook a little. The woman asked gently, "Are you ready?" Lyra nodded. A light blinked. The recording began. She looked into the camera. I don't remember where I was born. I don't remember my parents. I don't remember my real name. But I remember pain. I remember fear. I remember the first time someone looked at me and saw a person. That person was human. He gave me a name. My name is Lyra. She paused, breathing slowly. For years, I was just a number in the mines. I was nothing. But that name gave me strength. It reminded me, I'm alive. I matter. She looked down, then up again. There are millions still trapped, still nameless, still waiting. I speak now, not for me, but for them. I'm Lyra, and I am not going back into the dark. The video went viral across the galaxy. Not just on human channels, but alien ones too. People cried. People stood. People shouted. In bars, in homes, in rebel ships, they repeated the words. She has a name now. On one peaceful farming planet, an old alien mother whispered to her child, "You'll never be a number, my love. You'll always have a name." In a hidden prison camp, guards watched their prisoners begin to stand tall again. And far away in the Dravak council chamber, the leaders growled in anger. This girl must be silenced. But it was too late. The voice had already spread. The slave girl with no name had become the face of a movement. Back at the base, Lyra trained with other rebels. She learned to fight, to lead, to speak. She wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but she was the bravest, because she had survived the worst darkness and still believed in light. Jack watched her grow every day. He healed slowly but stayed by her side. One night, under the stars, Lyra asked him, "Why did you name me Lyra?" Jack smiled. "It was the name of my little sister. She died before the war. She always believed people could change the world." Lyra placed her hand on his. She was right. He looked at her and nodded. "Yes, because now, you've changed it." Months passed. Lyra stood in front of a rebel fleet, a real army now, built from broken survivors, freed prisoners, humans, and aliens together. She wore a simple jacket, no medals, no armor, just her name stitched on her shoulder. "Commander Lyra," someone called out, "the ships are ready." She took a deep breath. They were flying back toward the mines. Not to escape this time. To free the rest. Deep underground, Cranach sat in a cracked control room, watching cameras flicker. The walls were covered in red paint. "Lyra." He growled. "She's coming back." A guard whispered, "We should run." Cranach hissed, "We will crush them." But even he didn't believe it anymore. The fear had changed sides. The fleet arrived. Fighters dropped into the skies. Lyra stood at the front of the landing ship, eyes locked on the mine ahead. This time, she said, "no one leaves without a name." The doors opened. She ran forward, not as a slave, not as a number, but as a leader, as Lyra. And this time, the galaxy followed her.